Hello, I'm Jake Freeman, and welcome to the very first show of the Jake Freeman radio podcast series. And it is very special because it is going to be filmed as well. All the more reason to enjoy it as much as I do. And today, on our very first show, our very first guest is the one and only Ana Staisy. Ana is originally from the Ukraine, now living in Melbourne, Australia. She is a singer, an entertainer, an entrepreneur, and a person of many talents. She joins me on the show. Ana, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you, Jake. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this. Now, let's go back to the very beginning. I mentioned before, originally from the Ukraine. Growing up, were you musically inclined?
Well, I born in Ukraine, and I studied in Ukrainian conservatory, my musical degree in Kiev, and then I moved to Australia. Well, before I moved to Australia, I was traveling around with my show in Europe, about maybe 10 years in different countries with live bands, with show with some dancers. It was great time, and in 2010 I moved to Australia and continue my cultural life here.
Very big move indeed. But just going back, growing up in the Ukraine, what was it that got you involved in performing and entertaining and all the singing and all the dancing? Where did that all start?
I guess it all came from my parents, because my father, he is a musician as well. He played piano. His original degree is he's an engineer, electronical engineer. My mother engineer as well, but both of them, they are very talented, and they play instruments and they dance as well. Especially my mom, she's a dancer, but my father, he also learned the musical theory and he plays piano. So in our houses all the time in Ukraine, and also we have house in Russia as well, so I'm like both countries, in between both countries in my childhood, and we always had different, I would say, we entertain our relatives all the time and our friends.
Oh, that's wonderful. The music's just always there, just
Yes.
you've always got an instrument or something at arm's reach.
Yeah, so it's just I grow up with music and all the entertaining and performances. So yeah.
That's interesting because you mentioned your parents are both engineers by trade. Was that something you were thinking of doing, or if you were not into showbiz and all that?
My parents actually pushed me to start how you call that, biochemistry degree, not music at all. They said, what are you gonna do with music? It's not proper like degree or profession, to
have a backup career.
yeah
Backup plan.
And in university I did some pre-uni course, and only one point I didn't get into the government. In Ukraine we have private degree and government degree, so it's two different things, because for private you need to pay a lot. Government, it's different. The government pay for you like uni. So anyway, so I just didn't have one point to get into the government degree, into that biochemistry and stuff, and I turned around and I said my parents, no, I'm going to music. and I literally turned around, and next day I had exams to the University of Culture and Art, and I passed all the exams like high distinction, and I there.
Very good. What was their reaction when you turned around and said, that's it, music's my thing, and that's what I'm going with? What do they say?
Nothing. They say, well,
go for it, just do
yeah,
it.
go for
But it must have been sort of like always there, because if they were always, with musical instruments and performing and entertaining, somewhere along the lines, that must have come, you must have had that discussion growing up.
Yeah, that's true. But parents always want to have more security for kids, for my parents as well. So knowing that musical, I would say, industry not really developed, and it's all really corrupt in Ukraine, you really need to have connections to be there somewhere, to be a star. So knowing that, parents said, well, you need to learn earth profession and not the star profession. So, but at the end of the day, I end up with my musical degree, and I continued doing this and I love it.
And because I've never been to the Ukraine or Europe, for that matter, what is it like for someone who's not been there to perform in the Ukraine in clubs and restaurants and bars? Is it easy to get bookings, or is it hard, or how does that go for you?
Well, I think it's like everywhere. If you're good at it, like if you're good at singing, entertaining, I mean, you have certain level of it. You can get the bookings and stuff. But again, I started from 17 years old, so I sort of climbed that steps.
Yeah.
In even those I don't know, entertaining environment of my city where I was working and living. So I start with restaurant performance first because it's easier, and I learn a lot. I develop my skills to sing, to be a versatile singer, not only sing jazz or sing pop or something. You sing in restaurants everything, like whatever people, because there are lots of songs on order, as well. So you need to entertain. That's the hardest part. If you survive in restaurants, later on,
That's right.
Good.
What's in Ukraine or where you perform? Is there like a favorite genre they have in restaurants and places you performed? Is it jazz or pop, or what is it over there?
Yeah, it's a chanson. It's called chanson. It's prison songs.
Oh.
Because in those time,
Yeah.
I'm talking about 1999, 2000 years. People still have Soviet Union sort of set of mind, and that's the best style of songs. What if you sing those style of songs? That's it. People pay money for it. If you sing some pop or classical, it's not.
Okay, well, there you go. I did not know that. And have you performed in Ukraine since then, in the years like you've been in Australia?
Well, not really. So I moved from Europe to Australia in 2010, and since then I visited back. Like I visited Ukraine in 2015 last time, but I only visited my friends in the restaurants and clubs and some other concerts. There are lots of people who actually succeed in Ukraine as a performer, as a singer or as a dancer, so as a musician. But to be honest, to perform there, not really.
It's the test of the time. But even because you performed in Ukraine where you're from, and also Russia, but you've also performed around Europe before you came to Australia, and I think you speak up to, is it 4 or 5 languages?
Me?
Yeah. Well, you do speak quite a few languages.
Well, I speak Russian, Ukrainian, and English. Well, I used to speak French, but whenever you're not speaking much, you're losing the language. But I do understand. I can communicate a bit.
And of course, and how long were you performing around Europe before you came to Australia?
Yeah, so it's about, I would say, 15 years. So
Wow.
I performed in Turkey, in India, in Malaysia, Emirates, France, Poland, Germany, Maldives. I can't even remember. Yeah,
So
lots
many.
of countries. Emirates, yeah.
And finally, like you said, you came to Australia. What made you come to Australia and to settle in, of all the places?
Well, I came to Australia to learn English properly. And I studied my English course. I had 1 year of English language course. Then I decided I want to do hospitality because my dream was I want to open my own restaurant and have a restaurant. Because I used to perform in the 5-star hotels in the restaurant, and I always wondering, well, I also can do that. It sort of fascinates me, that business. Yeah, and then I finished my master degree in tourism and hospitality management, and also master degree in business administration in Brisbane in James Cook University, and I opened my restaurant in Brisbane.
And going and learning English, coming to Australia to learn English, how hard was it for you to learn English and get grasp of the language? Because it's not easy, especially if you've, I find, because I've noticed this with a lot of people I've met, with languages, the younger that you learn it, the easier it is to grasp, as opposed to the older than you are. But everyone's different. How was that for you?
For me, I learned English at school, but it's not It's just, it's only theory. You can speak English at school. It's basically, if you're not in English-speaking country, it's waste of time. It's not working.
Yeah.
No. But well, when I was in Europe, you have to communicate in English because there is no other way. But it wasn't that English because it's Italians or Germans or Polish. Everybody speaks different style of English, I
Right.
would say. But when I came to Australia, it's Australian English, and for me, first couple of months, it was really hard. I can't understand a thing, especially over the phone. When somebody calls you and wow, 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 oh my God, what they speaking? I was scared. I could not able to talk. But afterwards, when you talking to people and you sort of out there and you learning, so watching news, reading books, newspapers, it's coming. Yeah.
Yeah, it does, and that's what I heard a lot. They, like you said, they learn in school and they watch the news and read the paper and they try to make friends with locals to get in the gist of it all. So you've done very well in a short amount of time, I think, since you got there.
Well, thank you. But at some point of time, I start thinking in English, and when you start thinking in English, then you sort of fine.
Yeah.
Because before I was like, okay, let me translate. But now I'm not translating anything. So English now, it's like my native, so I can understand. Not obviously that well like English speaking people, but I would say I understand everything. And after my degrees, sort of it helps with English as well.
But was that because you obviously not only had to learn to speak in English, but also to sing in English? Was that hard as well to get the, because English music or the language of it all, you know what I mean, just to get the rhythm, because it's very different from back home, I would imagine.
Actually, Jack, it's two different things. When I speak in English and when I sing in
Yeah,
English, it's completely different, because you can't hear much accent when I sing in English, because somehow I remember the original, for example, if it's cover songs,
Yeah.
so I sort of remember the original style of singing of the original singer, and it's somehow not like you copy as such, but it's in there, in the musical memory. So whenever you sing in English and whenever you speak, it's like people sometimes say, oh, you sing in English, not much accent at all. We couldn't recognize, but when I start talking, obviously you can hear my accent when I talk. I'm Englishman in New York.
Yeah, I noticed a bit of that too on last Friday night with your performance, which we'll talk about later. But I read this too somewhere about Frank Sinatra, how a lot of people who came to places like America, who didn't speak English previously, would learn English while listening to his songs. And to him speak, because he was so well spoken and had such good speech and connotation, people would learn English from him. That's something I read somewhere. So it's just interesting when you learn people and where they're from and how they learn English, especially from Europe, because it's so, like you said, diverse and multicultural. So moving on from there, you obviously studied your course in English and you did your hospitality and tourism course because you wanted to open a restaurant. Since you performed in restaurants, would make sense to work in a restaurant too. Was that, how did you find that going in Brisbane?
Well, I opened restaurant in 2013. It was called Torba, a restaurant and lounge, Eastern European food. So I mixed sort of Slavic cuisine together, like
Nice.
Russian, Ukrainian, Polish, Hungarian. I had Hungarian chef as well. So it became something totally different, So we spread the culture, so for people to experience difference, something different from Europe. Because in Brisbane, there is no Eastern European restaurant as such.
No.
So it's Indian, Italian, you can find Asians or...
McDonald's?
Yeah, or some Aussie just food, But there is no such Eastern European food. So I'm the only one at South Bank, Brisbane, we used to be open. Why we used to be? Because I'm here, so restaurant not there anymore, but it was for 6 years. It was there for 6 years. And I had live bands every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights. So we had different menu every 4 months. So we always do presentation of the food. On our TV screens, we play Social Life in Europe. So we did vodka shots. Like I had on my bar, I had like, I don't know, 3 shelves of different vodkas from different European countries. Yeah. And people, they come and they experience, some different experience. So they love it.
Yeah, they would, because like it's Eastern European, you don't really have that much, at least up in Brisbane and Gold Coast and those sort of places. It's very, very Australian.
Yeah.
So I think it's good that you had that diversity and people got history lessons and, all those different dishes of food and variety. It's wonderful to have that, I think. And that was in Brisbane, and eventually just actually end of last year, you came down to Melbourne because... Why Melbourne?
Well, because I'll tell you why. So I launched my CD in Brisbane at Brisbane Multicultural Centre. So I was performing at every Spring Ball. I was doing performances at Russian Film Festival in Brisbane and organizing also opening nights. What else I did? I did lots of functions and weddings and performances, concerts, festivals. So I felt like I need to grow. I need to do something more. And Melbourne always appeared to me like more musical, I would say, center of the musicians,
Right.
And that's why I just decided, well, I should move here.
And I know, since you've been here, it's been about a year now, you'll find that Melbourne's a bit more European than Brisbane is.
Oh, absolutely. Here, first of all, the architecture, the city feels and vibes, the people, different seasons, I felt like I'm at home.
That's nice.
All the time.
And including the winters?
Yes, well.
At least we don't have snow, so...
Well, in Ukraine, winter -30, so you can't really compare.
No.
But still, sort of light autumn, I would say.
How different is it performing to an Australian audience than to a Ukrainian audience? Obviously, you do it in English here, but do you find it harder to relate? Like, I find this too with my work as a comedian. You go to different rooms and different places and towns that you sometimes have to do things differently to sort of fit that audience or that demographic. Do you find that in Australia, performing-wise, or apart from singing English, that is?
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right, because every sort of, people, they just, who live in certain cities or towns, they are different. They are all different. So, for example, Brisbane crowd is totally different from Melbourne crowds,
How
like
so?
the audience. Well, if you can impress Brisbane crowd, Melbourne is easier. I would tell you, because Brisbane more not that open-minded, I would say. They're really very straight to the Aussie culture, I would say.
Very Anglo.
Something like that, yeah. Yeah, they like country music. They like certain type of sort of music, and to sing something deep. For example, jazz audience in Brisbane, it's not the big audience at all. So pop music, I would say, okay, you can able to impress them, but jazz, it's only different level of people, and you need to particularly market that level to get the crowd,
Right.
In Melbourne, it's easy, especially if I mixed, for example, in different concert, like if I mix Russian and English songs and maybe a little bit of Ukrainian, little bit of Polish or something mix. So if it's English speaking but Slavic roots people, they are yours. It's easy.
But it can be a bit hit and miss at times, I think, with audiences. Like, you might expect they'll want there to be Russians or Ukrainians, and it's just mostly very, very Australian people who have no idea about European culture or music. And do you ever have those sort of nights?
Yeah, well,
where it's just not that audience that you want there to be.
Well, I think I can sing for any audience, because for Australian audience who never, I mean, who didn't have much knowledge about Eastern European culture, for them it can be interesting to learn something different. It's like same thing like I presented in Brisbane, my album Inspiration Through Culture. It's Slavic songs translated to English language, and arrangement is like pop style. So the majority of audience, it's Australian people. They came because they're curious what it is.
Yeah. Do you have a favourite song you like to perform? Or what is your favourite song in general?
I so often been asked this question. Well, there is no particular favorite song. So I like songs from Whitney Houston performances, or Sade, or if it's jazz, I like some classical Ella Fitzgerald or something. If it's some pop music, even Delta Goodman, like.
Yeah.
So it's not, it depends on the mood, it depends on your situation or something. I like listen lots of songs.
One of my favourite sort of Slavic Eastern European songs from that era was My Yiddish Mama. Have you heard of that song?
Well,
Tom Jones did a very famous cover of it.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it. It's a very, very popular song, My Yiddish Mama.
Okay, I'm not sure.
I'll show you to you later.
Okay.
But that's, there you go. But so now, moving forward, you came to Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
At one point you had your own restaurant in Caulfield, I think it was.
Yes, I had cafe at Glen Huntly Road for about half a year. Yes, and I just made a decision I have to do music and more performances, because the hospitality takes so much of time. You have to be there, you have to manage, you have to deal with suppliers, with customers.
Yeah.
It's really, I decided, well, I cannot catch two rabbits, I just need to go somewhere one direction. Yeah.
So does that mean closing the door completely on the restaurant business and just pretty much on music?
Yes, I would say I would rather do music performances and events organization rather than hospitality and deal with food.
Fair enough. Well, that's more entertaining. That's more fun, as we know with what I do as well. I can understand. And speaking of events, you had your very first show in Melbourne since moving here last Friday in Port Melbourne. Wonderful show. You did a great job with all the performances and the singing and the entertaining, and Brianna was there hosting. It was just a wonderful night. Wasn't that a lot of fun? I thought you did a brilliant job.
Thank you, Jake. Yes, well, I've tried. And, well, I choose that venue at Port Melbourne. It's a waterfront restaurant at Port Melbourne.
It's beautiful.
Yes, because it's really beautiful restaurant and it's matching the theme. So I launched my company, agency, I would say, Ana Staisy Events and Entertainment Agency. And sort of I organized the Hollywood-style red carpet event for that. And that restaurant matching the theme of the night. And yeah, that's why I choose that restaurant and organize the dancers, full program. And well, I did marketing also myself to sell tickets and organize, deal with customers, with people.
So where to next for Anna? What's the next event happening? Where's the next collaboration or big thing we can expect from you in the next few months?
Yes, it's gonna be in December, middle of December. It's gonna be Venetian ball masquerade, Italian style. It's a secret place, secret venue. I'm not telling this yet, but what I'm planning to do, it's gonna be Italian band, lots of Italian style entertainment, along with special bar treat. I organize special bartenders, and yeah, there are lots of surprises. I'm not gonna tell about this now. However, it's gonna be I hope it's gonna be a big night as well.
Well, we all do, and we'll stay tuned for that. So, and of course, if people want to check you out, want to know where events are coming up, you have your own website, I believe?
They can check on my website, anastaisy.com.au, and Ana Staisy, my Facebook page, and also my Instagram. So, well, YouTube, Google it, you'll find the information.
It is. Ana Staisy, thank you so much for joining us on the very first episode of the Jake Freeman Radio podcast series. Great to have you as our guest.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.